Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us tonight. I hope everybody can see and hear me. Normally, Mrs. Steve is over here with me, but tonight I'm going solo. As you can hear the grandkid going up the steps with Mrs. Steve. So tonight we're going to be talking about some of the recent developments and the suspects in the case, and especially the suspect that's been arrested, and along with other information that was contained in the affidavit and what has brought us to this day, and what we see in the future is going to be happening. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the show. As always, be respectful of all the mods, be respectful of each other. Don't use any names or initials of suspects or anything other than the people that we discuss are going to be, of course, the Kleins, which Kegan is in jail and has warrants and has a search warrant issued. Ron Logan will be discussed tonight, and along with Richard Allen. So, of course, those names we'll be able to discuss because law enforcement has brought them into the investigation, and just want to move forward with that. But as always, we're going to start with our show, which is we always begin with a brief bio. Normally, sitting over here to my left is Mrs. Steve. Tonight, like I said, it's just me. I'm Steve. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, 20 years of service. Started off my career in the jail, worked road, went into investigations. During those 20 years, I had all different types of training from SWAT all the way into becoming a state certified crime scene tech, which helped my investigative career immensely. I've worked all different types of cases from thefts all the way up to burglaries and then to homicides. But then I retired, and after retiring, found the web sleuth world and true crime, and decided that I was going to put my best foot forward trying to become an ambassador for law enforcement, which has brought us to this channel and creation of this channel. And as we move forward, trying to let as many people know and how we can all together, working together, have a great impact on the true crime world and our law enforcement. But tonight, we're going to be talking about, like I said, we have a trio of individuals, and I'm not here to defend what happened with Richard Allen's tip narrative being looked at 5 years later. I will be discussing what may have caused some of the confusion during this investigation and where we're at. And then, of course, we'll be discussing some of the movements and which way the investigations would have went during particular times. And then after our presentation, I'll immediately go into comments. And I just want to appreciate everyone that's is out there watching us tonight. If I miss any new members or any contributions or donors or anything, just bear with me because normally Mrs. Steve handles all this. So I'm going to probably be a little bit overwhelmed tonight, but I'm looking forward to it. And this is what we're here for. All right. This is one of the first persons of interest that was developed after the murders and the discovery of the murders of Libby and Abby. This is Ron Logan. The Libby and Abby were discovered on his property the day after they went missing. And of course, part of the things that have led to him being a suspect back then is that in his initial appearances, unknown or the worst choice of clothing an individual could have, he did. He showed up in a lot of TV interviews with news crews wearing the exact same thing that at that time no one knew what bridge guy looked like, and possibly even law enforcement didn't know that first day or two until they were able to access the data from the phone and then see a picture. And so there were several interviews done. And this man here happened to, in several interviews, wear clothing very similar. And then, of course, he reaches notoriety after the A search warrant affidavit for his property was revealed in the last year or so through murder sheets. And you find out from that affidavit what the FBI's interest in him was, from being tipped in, being identified, been called in, identified on the bridge by at least 15 people, I believe is what the number was. And of course, he had similar clothing, and for whatever reason, and I understand why law enforcement looked at him extremely intensely during those initial days, that once they find out, the FBI and all the other officers are investigating, that you have an individual that created an alibi. And from the affidavit, is during the exact time that the homicides occurred. And then they went and, of course, we have the phone pings. So I understand exactly why Ron Logan was a early contender and is still opined by a lot of different people as being bridge guy. I don't go along those lines. I think that if he was, FBI would have been able to find the link between him and the victims, and he would have been charged long ago. But that's my opinion. Everyone has opinions, but this is one of the things that clouded it up early, because there was so much that was pointing towards this individual, and caused, like I said, quite a stir and quite a bit of confusion, and still does. Then, of course, we have this individual, Kegan Klein. He was the creator and is the creator of Anthony Shots through the murder sheets release of the transcripts and his interview by law enforcement. He admits that. He admits that he contacted a lot of different victims, and even the morning of their murder, within the transcripts, it's revealed that he contacted them. And he also created an alibi. And through the transcripts, we find out that he catfished the Libby and Abby, or Libby. And don't know all the much about if Abby was also, but Libby definitely. And this individual, like I said, he admitted that he had never talked to a female that he did not want nude pictures of and other interactions with. And so, once again, there's a lot of indicators that would push you towards he is a prime suspect. And it would be, and law enforcement actually did search warrants at this residence too. I don't have a problem with that, and don't have a problem that he is a main suspect and still is a main suspect, because there, the coincidences of everything that's been released on this individual. Is he related to it, or is it just one of those astronomical incidents of different coincidences stacking up on top of each other? I find it extremely highly unlikely, but it's possible. But I do think that there will be at some point with the discussion, as Doug Carter has says, there's a lot of tentacles involved in this, and then you have where the prosecutor says that there may be other actors. Is this the other actor? We don't know yet. And then we come into our third person, our trio of Richard Allen. This individual, back in 2017, of course, he calls law enforcement and says, I was there. And so they set up a meeting, and he met with law enforcement, and he answered their canvassing questions. And so when we look at certain things like that and what canvassing questions he answered, and I created a little document and to look at and to show individuals in my community and people out there that a lot of times when you're conducting these investigations, you're going to have a standard questionnaire. Was this the case on this? I don't know, but it seemed extremely organized, and it's what is good law enforcement. And was certain steps taken that was absolutely correct? I believe so. Where there's some missteps that occurred, I know for a fact over the years, no investigation by law enforcement is perfect. Sometimes you get lucky and everything falls into place. And sometimes you have these unlucky missteps or just law enforcement just fumbling. And like I said, I'm not here to take up for them or otherwise, but just within the fog of the investigation, there is a lot of stuff happening early on in the investigation. It's a chaos. It's absolutely everything is fighting each every turn that you look and take. There's something there that you have to address. And until you get everybody organized and understanding the flow and working and everything start meshing, a lot of bad things can happen early on in investigations, and quite often they do. Is it forgivable? No, we should always learn from our mistakes and hold ourselves to a higher degree. And hopefully that will come out of this case also, that law enforcement has learned from this. Will there be a lot of finger pointing within law enforcement? I hope not. And will there be a lot of finger pointing from the YouTube creators? Yes, that's going to be. And the things I'm talking about tonight is just my opinion and my perspective. And it's my honest opinion and perspective. And like I said, I had a pretty good career, and I've been there. I've been in that heat of battle, and certain decisions have to be made. And have I made missteps? Absolutely. And will I make more? Probably. But anyway, this is we have the transcripts for Kegan Klein. We have the search warrant affidavit for Ron Logan, and we have the narrative narrative from Richard Allen. So we look at that, and everyone knows exactly what he says, that he was on the trail between a certain time, 13:30 and 15:30, which is 1:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon, and that he parked at the old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge. The old Farm Bureau building, in the narrative of the arrest warrant, they say that he was talking about CPS. Could be, or he may be talking about a different farm building. There was vehicles seen at the CPS building, but that is a farming community. Are there other farming buildings that he may have parked at? Was it a deliberate statement, or was he just unfamiliar with what that building was? And that was him actually there. I don't know. Law enforcement, hopefully they've assumed that CPS and the old Farm Bureau building is the one and the same that he's talking about. And then he walked to the new Freedom Bridge, and there's access along 300. There's a little gate there. If you come from the CPS building, you come out right there near the Freedom Bridge. And been there and looked at it, and it's quite interesting. And there's nothing better than being boots on the ground, going to these areas, looking at it, seeing exactly what the witnesses will have seen, and seeing exactly what the offender would see, and what, as he would evaluate certain areas of the trails, the remoteness, the isolation, who's on the trail, how many people, how many vehicles are in the parking lot. Because predators, they have to isolate. They have to totally control everything. A predator that doesn't maintain absolute control of everything in his environment isn't a predator very long. You'll cross the wrong individual, you'll misstep, you'll misevaluate the threats and the dangers to you, maintaining them and being able to look for victims, and you'll eventually, it'll lead to you being arrested and brought to justice. So predators generally play to the safe side of things, and because that's the only way they can survive. But while he was at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females, and he noted one was taller and everything. He describes meeting them, says that he was there. He did not remember description, or did he speak with them, of the others. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. So he puts himself not so much exactly at the abduction point, but he puts himself at the High Bridge, and which would lead normally law enforcement to put him in a special space on the suspect board. And through the tip lines and ever how the all the tips were organized and kept and maintained. And, you know, FBI is talking about that they had the resources and access to certain programs that they run and operate and enter information on. And did they misstep or not? No, don't know. But we know for some reason he wasn't looked at. And as his lawyers have stated, 5 years later, after this statement, law enforcement once again re-interviews him. But he says he didn't see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. So we know that he says he had a phone with him that day and that it should have located and pinged somewhere in the general area. If you watch my videos about pings in this area, they can be extremely broad. Sometimes they're relatively close. Sometimes they may be spot on. And then sometimes they may be within this great big circle. He stated that he saw vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead, but he didn't really pay attention to them. If he is a predator, this is all just word salad. Predators do not pay attention, to critical information. He would have paid specific, in-depth attention to exactly everyone he saw on that trail. He would note a lot of things about them. Certain individuals who had the phone in hand. Was the one female that he saw that was taller and brown, and who are these people? And he would have paid specific attention to everything. How closely grouped were they? Is this something that, where are we at? We have a lot of traffic going under this bridge. So this isn't the spot to ambush if he was just out there looking for random victims. Or was he looking for specific victims that he had targeted prior to? And he studied these victims. There's a lot of unknowns that we don't know. But all this stuff that he wouldn't have paid attention who was in the parking lot, he would have paid attention to who was in the parking lot. He would have paid attention to the traffic. He would pay attention to every bit of information in that environment. That's what predators do. They don't just go and by the luck of the stars and find someone. They have a system to it, and they act on that, and they hunt in that manner. He said that he did not take any photos or videos. It has a list of his cell phone data, which is something that I can tell you that seeing this laid out in this particular fashion, it tells me that there was some type of canvassing document. You have a conservation officer from, if you take what the attorney for Richard Allen says, met him at the store and passed this information along, then of course it's not normal that Richard Allen would say all this information and, oh yes, here's my cell phone, here's all these numbers, and this is who I am. And typically in the just a general report, you don't have the potential follow-up information. And that was who were the three girls walking in the area of the Freedom Bridge. And like I said, the highlight of this is that the three girls say they saw an individual, and 180 degrees on the opposite page of the one individual, it says, I saw the three girls. And so there's no larger big red flag that if you're looking for an individual dressed a certain way that looks like the guy on the bridge, this is it. This is what the tip that was missing from the puzzle that law enforcement needed, and they had it. And how did it get shuffled to the back? In the early days, like I said, I understand that. But the canvassing example with this questionnaire would look something like this. It would have been a simple index card or a standard sheet of paper. It had name of the individual you're interviewing, the date and time that you would have done the interview, and also the date and time that you was on the trails, which are answered in that little clip of the tip narratives. they would, and from the tip narratives, you see where he's parked. So these are standard questions that would have answered each aspect of that tip narrative. Where did you park? Did you see, speak with anyone? Descriptions of the persons you met. What areas of the trail did you visit that day? Did you have or use your phone? Did you see any vehicles? Where were they parked? Do you have any pictures or videos taken that day? What's your phone data? And more than likely, he would have took that phone and had some way of and going into the settings and the descriptors and got all the information. Or was that something that they cross-reference out later to include in the affidavit? But it says the tip narrative. So if it's within the tip narratives, it more than likely they went in there and looked at that and seized that information and put it into the tip. And then you have the potential follow-up questions. And this would have been something very similar to what the girls would have done and probably been within very similar to this. And so if you take all the things that we've discussed so far and look at it also from the standpoints of, we have Ron Logan, you got Kegan Klein, and you have Richard Allen. And I put them in a certain order. And this would be, and I'm being absolutely honest, that if you gave me the information of these three persons who either talked to the victim that day or was in the area that day and what we knew at that moment in time, this is order of importance of the investigations, I would have put them in. Of course, you have the one who is Kegan Klein, who created the alibi, that also catfished them, spoke to them morning of, and all this information, and absolutely would have a motive for certain, even up to murder. There's been people murdered for a lot less than what Kegan Klein's involvement with these young children was. And then you have Ron Logan, whose property they were found on, who dressed like a bridge guy, who created an alibi also for whatever reason, and that I would look at him. And then you have this other individual that says, I was there at the bridge, didn't see anyone, but he's the one that called and stepped forward and cooperated with law enforcement early on. Now, why he was missed, dropped, kicked out, whatever reason, I don't agree with that at all. He should have, all of these individuals should have been on that wall or in that whatever type of suspect filing system or computer program, whatever they were using in 2017. I have no idea. I can all go old school, which I like old school. And that's what I came up, even when we went into the more higher technological advancement that was made with the computers coming in. Yes, I worked law enforcement many years prior to computers in our jurisdiction being introduced. And then once they come on, of course, it's new technologies and things are happening. But by the time you look at 2017, that's mainstream. And so we have to look at all of that. And before we get into comments and stuff, of course, if y'all have any information regarding this case for the prosecution, for law enforcement, or for the defense, tip that information in. There's only one thing we want, and that's justice for Libby and Abby. And prior to kicking over into our and start answering questions, also, I just want to make a quick note that Monday night, I talked to Drew just a little while ago, and Monday night at 7 o'clock, we will have a program where we'll be talking to Drew about the abduction and murder of his child, Elizabeth, and the abduction and murder of her cousin, Lyric, that happened at Evansdale murders in 2012, 5 years prior to the Delphi murders. And so just want to give everybody a heads up on that. Join us, and look forward to talking to Drew. Absolutely fascinating man, and I admire him much. All right. So let's see if I can get out here without closing down the internet. And let's see, what will we do here? There we go. I think that's what we want. And let me get over here to comments and see where we're at. Let me get up here. I'm going to try to get all the way to the top and do like some of these other creators do, like Christian behind the crime door. How some of these creators do what they do and as quick as they are is absolutely fascinating. Normally, I have Mrs. Steve taking care of all this, and that is not the case tonight. But anyway, to get started here, I want to thank Verbal Judo for becoming a YouTube member. I think you were already or not, but if sometimes YouTube starts over for whatever reason, appreciate it. That support means a lot to us. And also, single mom, thank you. And I believe you also were already a member also, but for whatever reason, it's got us listed as that you're a new YouTube member. Appreciate your support. All right, let's go down through here and see what we got. And like I said, you just have to bear with me as I go through this stuff. And I appreciate everybody coming in. Sweet Caroline, Roxanne, Dave, Honeybee. And I won't be as smooth as Mrs. Steve is on this stuff. But most certainly appreciate everybody being here. Let's see here. Yes, Mrs. Steve is extremely excited about the Bulldogs win. She truly enjoys that. That she works extremely hard on the Cyclops system that we have of the missing murdered children. She works extremely hard on the creation and making sure that our show runs as smoothly as possible. And so she enjoys her ball games, and rightly so. And I want to thank all my mods that are in here tonight. Appreciate that, guys, because I couldn't do, especially tonight, anything without you. This will do nicely. Olivia. And, we got a new member also. We have a lot of members out there, but Diana, appreciate you, your support and everything. That means a lot to us. And, oh, yeah. It says here, Molly, her wrist still broken, has giant pins through her forearm, hurts like crazy. So forgive typos or missed tags. And Molly is one of my mods and extremely helpful. And I appreciate her immensely, just like I do all the people that help us. Let's see. I'll get down through here. Like I said, I don't see how some of these creators do it. So they're extremely good at this stuff. Yeah. Oh, they love the bat phone. Yes. I have several different versions of that over the year. I wish I had my original bag phone when we went into the technologies of the cell phone era. I wish I still had that cell phone. Hello, Purdue RN. Good to see you tonight. And Michelle. Let's see. Oh, man, this is funny. Good evening, everyone. Big Steve, love the way you run your channel. I wish you could run the state of Massachusetts. I've been to Massachusetts. It's been many years, but been up there. And it is an interesting environment. Yes, we tried to, CJK. I try to be as straightforward of everything I do for this channel. Right or wrong, everything's just my opinion. And sometimes I speculate. I tell you I speculate, because everyone has an opinion, and I enjoy listening to them. I've never had a problem with someone being 180 degrees from me, and I enjoy that for the importance of looking at different opinions. Somewhere between my opinion and your opinion, the right answer stands. And through those opposing views, we get to that. Even in investigations, that's exactly what has to happen. Law enforcement, a lot of times you have all these people arguing their own points. And so you have to get used to that battle. And that's what has to happen, not only in investigations, but it has to happen through our YouTube world and our true crime world. And so that is a something I wish to do and continue on. All right. You have to bear with me. Verbal judo. For some odd reason, my prompts don't work. I have no idea. Mrs. Steve will have to get with you on that. All right. And I'm getting some emails even as I do this, so you just have to bear with me and make sure. Yeah. And okay. CJK states that his stature is not the same as Bridge Guy. And that's another thing that with early on at law enforcement, they may have not had the measurements as far as Ron Logan or as far as Richard Allen or even Kegan Klein early on in the investigation. We don't know when those final measurements and early measurements came in. Exactly. Was there a lot of guesstimations? Could have been. Did they just put somebody out there on the bridge about that far away and say, okay, he's pretty close to this? I don't know what those early measurements were based on, and I don't know what scientists were involved at some point, what calculations were made, and that's going to be argued. And if you look at the FBI affidavit when they went after Ron Logan, from the identifications by neighbors, friends, and everything, they kind of embellished that it was of his same stature. And then, but we don't know in the early days exactly what that is. That's going to come out in court, and it's going to be argued greatly in court that the third party issues that the defense will bring into this will be, a lot of it will hinge on what you're getting at right here, CJK, and about the importance of that. And so we're going to find a lot of information out over the coming months about this. All right. And this is something else that Josh Poss, many, however, in Delphi wear something similar. And it is, I mean, a light jacket. And that, you know, on a day. Now, one of the trips, well, both of the trips I was there, I picked some harsh weather. When I got there on my first trip, that was in October, you know, it was in the 20s, which to a Georgia boy is harsh weather. It may not be harsh weather for people in Indiana. It is to me. And, but I also, here in Georgia, I have cold weather gear. I fish on a lot in the wintertime, winter months. And so I had the gear and was able to be comfortable when I was up there on the number of days that I visited on my first trip and went to the bridge. And then when I went back on my way to Iowa to meet with Drew Collins, I once again stopped in Delphi for a little while and was hosted once again by Purdue RN. Absolutely great friends I've made there. And but there is you know, people typically dress a certain way for certain conditions, and there's a lot of people that dress that way. And Michelle agrees with CJK. Nothing about Ron Logan is even close to Bridge Guy in her opinion, and there's going to be a lot of opinions on that. Like she says, and both ways. People are going to argue it both ways. And then I'm tending to that, yes, it is almost a uniform. What are the chances that you would go on a interview, speaking of Ron Logan, the day after or within 2 days or even a week wearing the clothes very similar to what your number one suspect, and actually who Doug Carter says that the person on the bridge is responsible for the murders, and that now we have a arrest warrant for the individual that is also credited with being responsible for the murders, Richard Allen. And so, you know, that uniform is, like I said, is it a coincidence? It appears so. Let's see. Let's see. Everybody's, hopefully Mrs. Steve will get with everyone that needs on the mods and make sure everybody. Single mom, is there really a guy around named Anthony Schatz? I think the Schatz name at one point was one of the neighbors to the Kleins. I seem to remember that name. Is that where it originated from, or is it just a play on words? Don't know. And the Anthony part in the world, is there's somebody named Anthony Schatz? Absolutely. You know, almost certainly there is. Probably, you know, how many of them? That is interesting to look at that, I guess, but throughout towns, but I'm sure that there's a lot of them out there. But the Anthony Schatz account that we know that created by Kegan Klein is not, that we know of, based for an individual. Kegan says that's what he created to catfish with, the way I read it. And so that's who I credit that with. I read some of these things I won't put out there, but I enjoy reading chat. And yes, CJK, you're right. Everything that has come out about Ron Logan is going to be that third party alternative suspects, and the attorneys will make great weight and hay with it. And what will it mean for the trial? End of the day, I have no idea, but it will be interesting. Oh, let me get over here where I can see. And Brian Howell says, Bridge guy was not on Ron Logan. You can tell by the facial features, it's not Ron Logan. A lot of people agree with you. Over the years, you've had so many people, other people that was close, and some of them were sexual predators that law enforcement looked at, that looked so much like the sketches, that looked a lot like the Bridge guy, with most pixelated picture you could ever have, and has led a lot of people to a lot of confusion. Let's see here. And Michelle Nicholas is absolutely correct that the Anthony shot was the name that these subhumans, yes, that's a good descriptor. The guys in the photo is actually a police officer now and was a model back in the day. Yes, he's up in Alaska, and he's been interviewed and talked to, and absolutely hates that they took his picture. And he says that there's thousands of people that use his pictures over the years for a lot of content and a lot of things that he has no knowledge of and unable to keep up with and fight through the internet of what it is today. Let's see here. And Dave here says, I think Richard Allen might have been stalking Libby or Abby via Snapchat. It's very possible, because we don't know when he really started targeting. But we know that Libby and Abby were targeted, at least by the Anthony Schatz account, for quite a while. And was that part of it, or was it Snapchat, or because it's just known throughout law enforcement that through victimology that those all victims at some point cross the paths of that predator that eventually oftentimes leads to the murder or thing. But crossing the paths of that offender that sometimes is months in advance, sometimes weeks, days, and it can even be minutes or seconds. These predators, once they target, and sometimes they stalk. BTK had I think in his murder books and things and his stalking records, he said that he worked as numerous potential victims at any one time. So that, and being the super predator that he was, and that some of these people operate that way. And so some of them stalk for longer periods, some of them only moments. And so anyway, let's see right here. Let me get this out, and we're going to continue on. Yeah, why? How about them bulldogs? Yes, Mrs. Steve is extremely happy right now upstairs. Yes. Yeah, we got some questions that as I go through here, the super chats and things were your questions. I'm not as quick as most, so we'll just get to them. And I'm receiving text messages from Mrs. Steve as I speak. True crime. Does Snapchat keep records of posts, etc., like in their own servers? I don't know what all the data and how long it's kept and through what efforts are made to maintain those logs. Is it like on the internet? Everything is somewhere. I'm hoping, and we'll find out exactly how right Snowden is about all the programs out there that keep up with so much information on all the citizens. We just don't know. And Dave says he thinks that Kelsey was the actual target. Possible. The sisters did look alike. And is it possible? Would her being on the trails that day have changed anything? If he had a firearm, probably not. And we may have been looking at multiple victims. Don't know. Any thoughts on there being two different cars, either at different times or at different close by places? Yes, that's always a possibility. And there will always be confusion about that because these trails are easily gotten to by multiple areas. There's, one parking lot that is totally out of sight that is at the edge of town of Delphi that you can get on that trail and be at Freedom Bridge in 5 minutes. Or you can park at the CPS, or you could park basically anywhere along those roads, park at the cemetery, park there at across from the Mears Farm in that area. And there was a lot of areas, but there, and so there could have the potential for numerous vehicles be there. And See-Through says that it always felt like a crime of opportunity, almost like a panic kill when you see how close to the water they were killed. I could be proved wrong, though. And from what one of the witnesses said at a point in the investigations that I don't know when that interview was done of the lady that said she saw a guy walking along that was muddy and bloody. If she came in with that information prior to anyone knowing how the girls possibly wound up in that location, and then there's a lot of weight could be given to that statement, and we just don't know from what is in the affidavit exactly when the timing of her tip was called in. Oh, I know something myself. For all of you people that's done anything so far joining, I forgot the blue light. Mrs. Steve is going to be upset I don't use the blue light more. All right. And single mom says that she's also thought about that Libby and who were the actual targets. And Jane from the country asks us, Dave, but why? What is the motive? We don't know the motive yet. And the crime scene, I'm sure there's indicators within that crime scene of what the motive was and what type of offender it was for them to base whatever the behavioral science unit with the FBI would have based their profile on. And but predator nonetheless. Let's see. Let's see. Single mom. From Michelle, why are the description of Richard Allen by the witnesses so detailed that nobody recognized him as a local CVS guy? We're talking about really the persons we have. I think of all the 9 people I listed, if you count both Richard and his wife, but the other 7 that there's only, you have the 3 girls that we know of that said that they only caught glimpses of his face, that he kept his face low, tilted away. And had they ever went into CVS? And in 2017, how long had he worked at CVS? I don't know his work history for that time, and if they'd ever even been into the pharmacy at that. And how many times have they went to the pharmacy since 2017? And was that possible that one of the tips could have been called in that one of these children came of age or at some point during the 5 years, if you go by what the defense attorney says, that law enforcement once again came to him 5 years later, that did one of these witnesses see him and say, oh, that is such and such, and tipped it into the law enforcement, and they went back and looked at those tips and found this? Don't know. Thank you, Robin, about appreciating everything. I try to do as much as I can to get everything in. I'm glad you're listening and joined us tonight. Let's see here. Molly says that she believes that that he was working at the Delphi CVS in 2017. Could have been. Like I said, I don't know the exact timeline of when he went employed there and at Walmart, or if he had multiple jobs. Being someone that's had multiple jobs over the years during this, in law enforcement, to make it in law enforcement, because we're not the best paid in the world. Sometimes you do work a lot of part-time jobs that are associated with law enforcement. Hey, Fig, glad to see you here. Appreciate everything you do. Great creator. Check him out. And let's get on down through here. Everybody's appreciating that. Let's see. And Ann is absolutely correct. Standard questionnaire info, it's only as good as what information you ask for and how you put it in. Are they mistypes, typos? Yes. Can things not get searched correctly if you leave out searching for certain words? And then mistakes happen. It's not taken up for what happened, but it did happen. And I'm glad where we're at now. I'm glad that we have this um, uh, person of interest suspect. We have the charges. We have probable cause. And and I'm glad that we're starting down this path that will lead to justice. Um, and if this is the right guy, we still haven't had the evidence presented, and it hasn't been argued against. And there'll be a lot of good arguments by this defense team about all the information that we currently know. Yes. Hello, Christian behind the crime door. Hope all is well. It is. And I'll be going over checking you out whenever I'm through here, Kristen. Finish up a cup of coffee or two with you. This is interesting. Deep waters. What amazes me is the lack of foliage and coverage to kill the young girl, where the girl's quiet as a mouse. Going to the crime scene and getting into the area where it was, um, the area of where the bodies were located was almost in a bowl. I mean, you're looking at not quite sheer cliffs, but steeply inclined that you wouldn't want to fall down the facing of those embankments. I climbed them in the dead of night in absolute darkness with no flashlights, and almost went over a time or two myself. But I wanted to experience that. But one way to experience it, go there and do it. And we were doing some field trials and doing some tests, and as far as phone pings and stuff, and it was quite revealing. And I'm glad I did it, and because I have a better understanding of that, of what could have gone on, and how would the noises, and who would have had access to possibly hearing someone scream for help. Wasn't able to do the sound tests on those noise levels and see where it was, but knowing from working other scenes um, and shooting guns and understanding how embankments and valleys funnel sounds and noises where they were located at, it would have only been able to be heard from basically one direction across the creek up towards the hill. I think was where the Weber property is. And yeah, CJK, you're correct. How many of them go and do that and can go to the pharmacy? We just don't know. All right. Also, get that on that now for a little while. True crime. Were any of the girls at the bridge that day also the girl that had the ski mask peeping in her window? I don't know if it was or if they were. I'm sure they were friends with, or they may have known each other. I don't know exactly whatever relationship of all these girls were, and I don't know to identify, uh, or they haven't released the identity of these girls that I know of. Good question, though. And let's see here. Hello. Thank y'all for coming, Sharon. Good to see you. Oh, me. Some of the, yes. I appreciate chat so much. I really do. Um, oh, me. Caesar, do you think they have polygraphed him? It's been offered. Now, whether or not he accepted, we'll never know unless it's leaked, or if he takes one and what are the results? Polygraphs are across the board. I never really liked polygraphs. Was involved in a lot of them, taken a few, but never really was impressed with them. And this is, like I said, I stated this the other night, and I agree, his motive. I still can't process how Richard Allen, after being seen by these people and having to walk back bloody. Now, he wouldn't have known at the time that he was going to have to walk back bloody, but he did know where he was parked. He did know all the people that he passed, and then he still, if the arrest affidavit is correct, murdered Libby and Abby. And it is fascinating. What happened? What was the motive? What was the trigger that happened? Was there something that he said? Was it something that he said to Libby and Libby Abby made a certain response that, he had made that decision? We just don't know. We don't know what was building up. I mean, when you're looking at certain individuals, psychopaths and their profiles, they can go in and to a different personality. And of course, BTK, Dahmer, Bundy, all of them say that, they could hide, and they were quite successful in hiding in plain sight. But did other people catch glimpses of their psychopathy, of how vicious and what type of individual they were? Yes, they would have been glimpses of them. They may have thought they were in complete control, but in hindsight, a lot of people say, yes, I saw something strange one time. And is that going to be true with Allen? We don't know. But it makes no sense why he would do this. None. After being, but then you had Ted Bundy approaching and acting as a law enforcement officer and picking out, they've done studies of these predators and of showing potential victims in mall areas. And the studies are very indicative that these different predators, more often than not, picked out the same victims for whatever reasons, because they understand what a potential victim looks like. Are they situational awareness very poor? Are they by themselves? Or, what's going on? How alert are they? What is their physical stature? Is there something that is key that they like about that individual? And but the studies are out there, and it's very interesting of what some of these predators look for, and how it's not unique. It's very general. Debbie D, hey everyone, a friend of mine recommended this channel as I've been deep diving into this case. Thank you. I'm glad for your friend that recommended you, and I appreciate you coming here. And there's a lot of great channels out there that have a lot of great information, and I'm glad that you've come into the true crime world and trying to have an impact. Absolutely appreciate that. Oh, let's see. And I got to go down through here and see if there's some super chats. And I know there's some super chats, and I know I've missed some. And I'll try to find. I got to get to those at a minimum, or I'll get in trouble with Mrs. Steve. All right. Dark Arts by I appreciate it. Or ballistics, good science. Yes, ballistics has been noted as great science. The other, the tool marks and what we're about to find out about the ballistic casings on unspent rounds is going to be analyzed and talked about and debated. And of course, there's a lot of science issues that we're going to find out, and a lot of people are going to come. And I'll be, actually, I've got some equipment I've ordered to address this issue from, have I collected tool marks from instruments that was used in certain crimes over the years? Yes. Am I an expert in ballistics tool marks? No. But I understand and have seen the reports from them. And so we'll go in that. We'll look at some of that information. But yes, the ballistics part of the is absolutely great science. The casings, has it been used in court before? Yes. You've got all different types. And it's more known from when a weapon is fired. The unfiring of when that bullet is just sitting in there and it hasn't been fired, and the pressures from that case and of the bullet going down, and all the pressures in that chamber of that bullet going out and expanding into the walls of that chamber and catching every bit of the minutia detail from the tooling marks would be transferred to that case as it's pulled from the chamber is different than an unspent one. And so we're going to learn a lot of information on that, because there are still certain characteristics that you will be able to tell from that chamber. But we also have to remember that with an unspent round, it's just like people. Everyone has fingerprints. Not everyone leaves fingerprints. As if you talk to the CSI people, there's a lot of ways that fingerprints are not left. Sometimes it's just due to the person's chemistry of the body makeup, that they don't have oily skin, they have dry skin, and so they don't leave fingerprints. And I'm just saying that analogy so that you understand that just because there's fingerprints there doesn't mean that there will always be identifying fingerprints left, even by the tool marks within this weapon. It's far easier to identify those fingerprints, tool marks, if you want to link the two, when the gun is fired. Not as easy when it's not fired. And so not all guns will leave the same fingerprints consistently. And so we'll be looking at that, and a lot of people will be arguing. But they will be, sometimes you will absolutely be able to identify certain characteristics from a gun that does leave fingerprints consistently, even on unspent bullets or rounds. But appreciate your support, and let me see if I can catch up to some more. And if I miss anyone that did contribute tonight, I apologize. I'm in a new world by myself tonight. Deborah Young, in all your career, have you ever had a suspect come forward and put themselves right in the middle of a murder crime like Richard Allen did? Yes, maybe not the murders, but in a lot of different cases. And now there was a murder of one of my neighbors that the suspect did exactly that. They put themselves in the middle of the murder. That happened of a young girl many, many years ago. But he did. He placed himself in the investigation, and he was caught, convicted, and executed for that crime. Yeah, y'all hear the footsteps. I'm just now getting to that section. On Burt, why would a judge issue a gag order? There's a lot of different things and reasons they would. Sometimes to protect parts of the investigation, sometimes to protect the court, sometimes to protect the interests of the court and of the persons involved, charged, and to and protect certain witnesses. There's a lot of different reasons why they will issue gag orders. The publicity of what this case will have, it's going to be very similar. It's going to absolutely be the largest, I believe, investigation and trial that Indiana has had or ever will have. And of the public knowledge. So there's a lot of reasons why this judge would issue gag orders in certain parts of it. They just don't want the information out there now. It's going to get out there eventually, but they just don't want it pre-hearing, pre-trial. Appreciate your support. Good for you, Mrs. Steve. Ever so often, it's good to remind them that calls we make it look easy. It isn't. You make a great team. Yes, Mrs. Steve does make it look easy on my part. I'm as lost as a last year's Easter egg when it comes to some of this computer stuff. So you just have to bear with me. Could Allen's defense bring up alternative suspects in court, such as the Kleins, if they're not connected? Yes, they'll be hearing about who they will bring up and how they will bring up, but the defense will have their say of it. There'll be arguments for and against the alternative suspects and third parties. And they issue search warrants and they did a lot of things. And when you do that, law enforcement makes those steps, then of course they will go for it. Checking convictions. Hello. I'll check out checking convictions channel also. Greatly. Trying to catch up and see what else. SP74, good to see you tonight. And I know I've probably missed about 1,000 different people. Dark Hearts, is the gag order meant to keep the defense from revealing info that the prosecution has maybe given to the defense? It would have to be more than. Is it possible? Yes, but it's the gag orders is more. What information and discovery is out there. It's more for what the public opinion and the effects of what it would have on the jury pool. And because as this case goes forward, the jury pool has to be that wherever they get that jury pool from, and that they want that jury pool with the least amount of knowledge about this case as possible. Now, are they fearful that the defense will throw it out there, the lack of evidence? Yeah, they probably are. So what the actual arguments may be, and you may be 100% absolutely correct of why they're doing it. And but the defense and the prosecution, whenever they have these orders, they argue it from other logical standpoints. But sometimes, and you may absolutely correct that the prosecution doesn't want the information released and for certain reason. And that's a good point. Let's see here. Let's see. Conviction. It says, I've been busy in real life. I want to stop in and show some support. Thank you for all you do. You're a sad set to our community. Appreciate you and your wife. And I appreciate you, checking conviction. Been on, talked to her, been on her shows a few times. Very respectful, great community that she has. Don Burke, why would the judge order a gag order? We just covered that. I'll hit several things, but like I said, it can be for a lot of different reasons: protecting the courts from certain publicity, to protect that jury pool, or certain victims, for witnesses, for the investigation purposes of certain information possibly being leaked before the law enforcement gets to the point that they want it out there. There's a lot of different reasons why, but once an arrest is made, it fast tracks a lot of the what's going on in the courts, and a lot of people have to act, and they want to protect the information as much as possible. Let's see here. This is Mississippi. Any thoughts about what stock Richard Allen was checking on his phone, since I'm sure he's quite the investment analyst? Yeah. Yeah. And they will, now that it's come to light, they will probably check and verify that. Purdue, question: would you ask each person of interest to stand on the bridge in the exact spot of bridge guy video? I would have, and try to get them out there, but absolutely, and try to use the same equipment that they had. Now, forcing them may have been a different issue, and being able to secure and make sure that if you are talking to the right person, that you don't want to take a dive off the bridge. But there's a lot of things that would have to fall in line to get them out there in that environment. But yeah, it would have crossed my mind. Absolutely. Now, my bosses might not have been happy with me getting out there on the bridge with them, but I would have tried it. Alice B. here. I agree with crime of opportunity, not catfish, because he left her phone behind. Yeah, and there's a lot of different reasons why that phone could have been left behind. Was it a fight? Was it just dropped during it? Was it something that they collected? Knowing the path taken now, it appears that it would have been dropped pre-crossing of the creek, and that if we are to believe all the witnesses and the witness that saw him, person matching the description of bridge guy that was bloody and muddy in the opposite direction, that there wouldn't have been opportunity to get that phone if it was on the other side of the creek in that location, unless it was thrown and or not. So we just don't know some of the information. Let's see here. That off there. Yeah, the blue light. Dark arts. I once heard a former detective tell people to never go with anyone because your chances of getting killed is much higher. It's better to try to run right then and there. And that is pretty good. That you have a chance. Very few people ever leave the second location. You may have a chance at the first location, but if that individual has what they have planned for you, the odds of leaving the second location are greatly reduced. And of course, everyone has their own opinions of how they would address when that moment arises. Did I have that, and have I had this discussion many times with Mrs. Steve and baby Steve, and I will have with my grandchild about this. Yes, that you're absolutely correct. I've always told them that I want it to end at the first location. Don't ever go to a second location. And I'll support you regardless of what happens at that, and whatever the threat is, take care of it at the first location, is my 2 cents. And there'll be a lot of people argue that, but that's just the way I feel about it. I need to grow some tentacles. Yes. And Rose, it is. Why wouldn't you call police to check on muddy blooded person, get him help? Don't know. And that will be asked when this person gets in court, when they're on that stand. I'm absolutely believe that they will ask that question. Uh, Hello, Aspen. Good to see you. Josh Posh, when law enforcement constructs these canvassing questionnaires, there are standard methods, priority responses, or are they coded? Um, yes, whenever you create a questionnaire, of course, you have certain things, and that's what's so important about the questionnaire, because you can tell a lot of information of what they're looking for when you have what the answers, when you talk to people that's been, just like you'll look at um, the Idaho murders and the neighborhood canvassing. I think CD was talking to one of the neighbors the other day, and that's one of the questions I asked of the neighbor was there certain parts of the questionnaire that drove you to seeing that there may be what they're focusing on. And whenever you originally the questionnaire is there to get you everyone that might have been in the area, that was in that area, that might have saw something odd or suspicious. And then as you get more information, you have a key list of everyone in the area that now you can go back as your investigation develops and new information comes out, and you know that we're not trying to talk to a whole community. We're trying to talk to the most important people that have the most critical information then. And we can start narrowing the scope and narrowing the field of suspects. And what did you see, which should have occurred with Richard Allen? Good question, Josh. All right. I'm trying to get through here. I'm going to try to get everybody. There's a lot of great questions. I'm not be able to get to everybody. Mrs. Steve is trying to help me out as much as possible from being side entertained by a very uh, smooth operator up there, that grandchild. Mm-mm-mm. If any of y'all don't have grandkids yet, it's a great lesson in life. Honeybee, you're doing great. Don't do too good, or Mrs. Steve will leave you on your own. I've She's suggested that I do it on my own a lot, but no. Um, Been with her a long time, and I understand exactly where we're at, and that she is a great part of this show. And I have no ambitions of doing anything in life without her. Thank you, Honeybee, for your super sticker. Appreciate it. It means a lot to us. Let's see. Scott Brown. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Means a lot to us. And we've used that money to help in so many different ways for so many different families. And as we go forward, and like I said, I talked to Drew Collins earlier, and also we'll be talking to him Monday. And during our conversation tonight, I won't do a spoiler on what he told me, but it's absolutely tells you the character of this man. And when I tell you the story Monday night of what, because he had told me about certain parts of as we would do the interview, that no questions are off the table, but he did make a statement, and you'll see what his true character is. Absolutely amazing human, and you'll understand what I'm talking about Monday night when we discuss that. And that show will be Monday night, 7 p.m. We'll start it. We won't be on the Tuesday night aspects of that we normally have our shows for next week. Yes, going down through here. Yeah, y'all bear with me, guys. I don't see how some of these people, and I'm just zooming through here. Cop facts. I enjoy talking to cop facts. He said, I don't know how you do it anyway, but now without Mrs. Steve. Really? Yes, really. And it is extremely difficult. Not the young mind I used to have. I used to have a pretty sharp mind, not of that caliber. Old age will do that to you. Ramzilla, $5 super sticker. Appreciate it. It means a lot to us, and we appreciate it. And like I said, all that is very humbling to us that we couldn't do it without y'all's support. And he left a phone and a bullet. Yes, he would have left phone data and the phone in several different ways. That he left a phone. He left his own digital imprint if that phone was on, and then he left a phone that might possibly that had his or had Bridge Guy's image and video and voice and a bullet, which is huge. The bullet is huge if they can take those tool markings and link it to his pistol. And this is a good point from Rockaways. I'm just saying, if you were that game warden, you would have questioned the interaction in your mind at least once in the next 5 years and knocked on Tobe's door and had a sit down. And I do question that. Where was this guy at? Is he retired? Is he deceased? I don't know anything about it. Was he brought in from a different part of the state? And we don't know how Richard Allen was dressed that day. We don't have a lot of information that when he talked to him and what notes were made by and what his perception of Richard Allen was, was the 5'3", 4-inch Richard Allen so far outside the parameters of the 5'6" to 5, or what original information was, and did that misleading? But you would think that just the mentioning of seeing the Bridge Guy and the 3 girls that says I saw him, and that he would have made the connection that he talked to a guy that says, oh, I saw 3 girls, and then you hear a girl that says I saw him on that. You would think there would be a link there, but just don't know why. There was several missteps over the years, and there's a lot of stuff going on. How many interviews did this conservation officer do? During their early days, we know that there were thousands of interviews of these canvassing possibilities because you had these tips. As the tips came in and they gave them to officers to go out, how many interviews did he do that one day? You know, if it's a 10-minute interview and you've got 20 or 30 people you got to interview that day and you do it for a month, this is only one interview of 600 that possibly this individual took. And did it just get lost in his chaos and that fog of initial interview and all these people? Could have. Don't know. It's not like he just did one interview and gone. I hope not. But there's a lot of different reasons and just don't know. Who is Baby Steve? Baby Steve is my child, and so she's my daughter, and so she was jealous of Mrs. Steve's name, and she said, "Well, I want to be Baby Steve," and so she's joined in as Baby Steve, and I've got to get her a coffee cup actually for Baby Steve. Could he have struggled with one of the girls and dropped the gun, and that would be the reason a bullet was left behind? It would have had to take a cycling of that gun for the bullet to fall out of it. Now, doesn't mean that that bullet at some point did he have additional ammo on him that had been cycled through that gun. If you read the affidavit, that bullet had been cycled through the gun at some point. Was it day of? Was it additional ammo that he had on his person? Because someone that deals with firearms routinely and over my career, you cycle ammo through your weapon for a lot of different reasons, from going from the practice range to your duty rounds and cleaning your guns, and a lot of bullets through your stockpile and of ammo that you have. A lot of them get rotated through. How that bullet ended up there, don't know. Actually, I'm creating some content now of showing the, I went and got two pistols, 1.226, a P model 226 and a P 229 6-hour models to look at some of the stuff that we'll be looking at in the coming days of some of my control tests that I'm running, and I'll bring that up in the upcoming days. But yes, that could have possibly led to that. And has anyone thought about why the bullet was found between the bodies and was posing the gun to make the video, some other trophy photo? I assume the bullet was dropped after they were dead. Don't know all that information, but some of the testing that I've conducted, you'll see in the coming days of the art of a unspent round and of spent rounds as they fly through the air. And you'll see that hopefully by Wednesday. I'm still creating. There's a lot of stuff that I do and still work the other code cases, prepping for the interviews. There's a lot of things that have to be done. And I'm trying to get caught up. Just bear with me, guys. Cop Facts, appreciate your perspective, and I do too. I talked to him. He's extremely intelligent, and I will have loved to work cases with him. And we've talked about some other cases that we are looking at, and I get his opinion on many different things because it's always good to get differing opinions from different people who have had an impact in their careers, and he's one of them, and I respect him highly. And I hope at some point that we do collab and have some type of I know CD's even mentioned that we have an old timey choir practice, whereas we talk about certain aspects, and I'll be looking at possibly trying to create something that we can talk about of how we believe the YouTube world and how we may be able to help everyone out there in true crime to try to have a better impact, because that's what I ultimately want. And I know Cop Facts agrees, and but at some point I hope to work with him. Already working with him in things behind the scenes that we do a lot of things behind the scenes that no one will ever know, and I admire him for that and appreciate him for that. All right. And how many guns are made from the same die? That batch will leave the same mark and calibrated machine duplicate part. And that's the thing that we're going to be talking about. Tool marks and tools wear as each individual gun and is made and cast, and as they're drilled and as each part is made and as they're assembled, there's just so many variables, and all guns do certain things, and it's, you know, can you ever create two, even identical twins have differences. Fingerprints are not the same, even on identical twins. Their DNA is, but not their fingerprints. And so fingerprints are unique. And so if you look through it from that perspective, no two things in nature, just like snowflakes, they're not identical. They're made the same way and at the same time, but they're not identical. And will they be able to get the professional in there on that stand to convince that jury that gets qualified to state their opinion out there to be able to verbalize that? I hope so. If not, it won't ever get in court. I'm running a little bit long tonight, and I'm just trying to get everybody um, answered. Okay, I got through the end, took care of everybody, and if I missed anyone that donated anything tonight, or super chat, super stickers, or joined, I apologize, because this is something that I'm not used to doing by myself, and and but I appreciate everybody that's been here tonight, and I'm gonna go and watch Kristen now and take and see how she's doing, and but I appreciate everyone that's been here tonight, and I hope that y'all continue looking at this case and fighting for justice for these, because Libby and Abby absolutely deserve everything we can do for them. And if you have any information on this case, like I said, for the prosecution, for law enforcement, for the defense, let them know, because we want it to be a fair trial and we want justice. That's all we want, and nothing more. And remember, Monday night, 7 p.m., we'll be talking to Drew Collins about the Evandale murders and everything. So I appreciate everybody that's been here tonight. Looking forward to hearing from y'all and seeing y'all soon. See you Monday.